The black wings beat a steady tempo beneath the setting sun, drawing ripples of molten gold across the clouds. Daenerys Targaryen leaned forward in her saddle, letting the warm, copper-scented breeze roll over her cheeks as Drogon banked southward. The air tasted of brine and distant storms. Beneath, the summer sea stretched to every horizon, lapping at its own edges, as though reluctant to cede them. Somewhere beyond that shimmering line lay Valyria. Her family's cradle, her people's grave, and perhaps, if the gods or the winds allowed, her future. She stroked Drogon's obsidian scales. "Soon," she whispered, the single word swallowed by the wind. He rumbled, more sensation than sound, a deep vibration that traveled from his spine into her bones. Drogon remembered the doom in blood-tinged dreams he had never lived. And some part of him yearned for those smoking ruins, the way roots yearn for earth. Daenerys felt it too. A pull older than language, a call of cracked marble avenues and wind-scoured obelisks, of forges long extinguished, and vaults rumored to contain the secrets of Dragoncut. If the world still held any place that might forgive her sins and forge her anew, it was the place that had birthed fire itself. Behind Drogon, two more dragons wheeled in loose formation. Velaryon, green-scaled and impatient, dipped toward the waves before snapping skyward in a spray of silver droplets. The younger moon dancer, pale as fresh ash, copied the maneuver with graceful caution, her smaller wings slicing the air like knives of glass. 2 years had passed since Daenerys found their eggs in the cave beneath Dragonstone. 2 years since she had dared to believe that Drogon's lonely reign might give way to a new order. Now they formed an embryonic brood. Not enough to cow the world, perhaps, but enough to begin. The wind shifted. Drogon adjusted with a languid tilt of his wings. Far below, dots of light flickered against the darkening water where the flotilla trailed them. 3 low-keeled galleys, striped with black and cream sails bearing no sigil. Dario Naharis had argued for banners, bright cloth to broadcast the Queen's return. But Daenerys had refused. "When smoke rises over Valyria," she'd answered, "the world will see my banner well enough." In the flagship's prow stood Grey Worm, armor polished though no court waited to inspect it. His gaze tracked the Queen's silhouette in the sky as faithfully as a lodestone. Beside him, Asha Greyjoy, now styling herself captain of the scant Ironborn who remained loyal, chewed on a length of dried squid and discussed supply charts with Missandei. Together, they commanded the motley remnants of unsullied Dothraki bloodriders, Neathi volunteers, and former slaves who had chosen this uncertain voyage over any known shore. All had seen cities burn. All had scorched their bridges behind them to follow the mother of dragons into rumor and legend. Night seeped into the sky, cooling its bruised purples to velvet black. Valyria's ruins crept over the horizon at last, jagged silhouettes rising like broken teeth from ebon water, their outlines limned by starlight. Even at this distance, Daenerys smelled sulfur, an acrid tang that evoked battlefields and birthing fires. Drogon's pupils narrowed to slits. His chest expanded, warming. She laid a calming hand on his neck. "Not yet, my heart. Flames later." They circled the northernmost peninsula, whose cliffs crumbled directly into the sea. Basalt columns jutted from the water like shattered organ pipes. Farther inland, ancient avenues lay half-buried beneath ash drifts, while statues, heads snapped off, limbs melted, stood sentinel over nothing. The doom had carved its memory into every stone. But beneath ruined Daenerys saw possibility. Each fallen arch, each collapsed bathhouse, each shorn colonnade whispered of former grandeur. Strip away the ashes, reforge the steel, coax life from glass gardens, and one day children would marvel where ghosts now moaned. Her heart thudded to match Drogon's. Hope and terror braided inside her. Could she truly resurrect more than desolation? A woman who had once conquered Slaver's Bay now set foot in a realm that had murdered itself. She touched the leather pouch at her belt. A scrimshaw cylinder stolen from the citadel by a repentant novice. Within lay scorched vellum fragments. Formulas of dragon lore, notes on pyromancy, sketches of vault doors sealed with glyphs of Valyrian steel. Shreds. Nothing more. Yet to Daenerys, they were seeds. Give her soil of ruin and she would plant forests of fire. Drogon coasted toward a broad plaza, where wind had scoured the ash to reveal mosaic tile in swirling reds and golds. He alighted with a thunderous beat, stone cracked beneath his hind claws. Valyrian and Moondancer dropped nearby, folding wings with chirps of excitement. Daenerys dismounted as lightly as a dancer, boots raising little puffs of gray dust. For a moment she simply listened. The creak of old colonnades, the hiss of distant fumaroles. No voices, no chains, no bells tolling for surrender. Only emptiness, as though the land itself held its breath. Torchlight approached from the path to the harbor. Dario, Grey Worm, and Missandei ascended a staircase, whose steps sloped like tongues of obsidian. They bowed. No titles spoken. They had abandoned such pageantry on the crossing. "The men have made camp," Grey Worm announced. "Perimeter secured to the second ring of walls. The ruins hold sounds." He hesitated. Wary as ever of ghosts he refused to name. Daenerys nodded. "Let the sentries double until dawn." She turned, surveying the plaza. "We build here. The pillars still stand, and the sea lies within easy reach for supply." She pointed to a half-intact amphitheater bordering the square. "The dragons will roost there." Dario grinned beneath his curling mustache. "An empire from rubble. Only you would call this home, Khaleesi." The affectionate jibe could not mask the sharpness in his eyes. Even he felt the weight of the doom in every swirling eddy of ash. She ignored the quip. "Tomorrow we begin clearing debris. Brick by brick. We salvage what can be reforged, melt what cannot. The forges here once wrought steel superior to anything in Westeros. Let us see if their bones remember those songs." "Songs," Missandei echoed softly, touching a chipped mosaic petal. "Valyrians shaped stone with sorcery. If those arts linger." "They do," Daenerys said, though she did not yet know how she would awaken them. "We will learn their tongue as children learn lullabies, by repetition and by need. And we will sing new verses." She stepped into the center of the plaza, where cracked tile arranged the sigil of House Targaryen, three-headed dragon blazing scarlet against gold. Time and heat had fissured the pattern, yet the head still glared defiance at the heavens. Daenerys knelt, gloved fingers tracing each broken scale. "I promise you," she murmured, "we will not fail." Above, Drogon loosed a growl that rolled across abandoned rooftops like distant thunder. Valyrian answered with a higher trill. Moondancer fluttered her wings. The sound of dragons, alive and hungry, echoed through the city's hollows, chasing spiders from crevices. Somewhere below the plaza a tremor responded, a subterranean groan of shifting earth. The island, too, remembered. Long after her retinue retired to their tents, Daenerys remained seated on the mosaic. The smoky night draped around her shoulders like a velvet shroud. She watched the stars. Each speck seemed brighter here, where no lamplight or furnace challenged their reign. Her eyes traced imaginary paths between constellations, weaving lines into shapes older than Valyria itself. Shapes that perhaps once guided the first dragon lords across these skies. Somewhere beyond even those stars, another world waited. But this fallen jewel was hers to polish. Footsteps rustled. Grey Worm emerged from the dark, helm tucked beneath one arm. He stopped at the edge of the sigil. "My queen?" "The northwestern quarter is clear. Fires burn to keep the low mists at bay." "Namar." "Thank you," she said. He remained, silence stretching. At last he spoke. "Some unsullied believe spirits roam the ruins." "They do," she answered. "But they fear us more than we fear them. Tomorrow your men will carry torches into every hallway. Light banishes shadows." He inclined his head. "As you command." "Grey Worm." He paused. "They follow you because you are proof that chains can break. Remind them of that. Valyria's ghosts are merely echoes of chains that failed to shatter." He considered this, then returned his helm. "I will speak to them." He withdrew without another word. Daenerys touched the tile one last time, then rose. She moved through corridors of moonlit pillars, Drogon padding behind, each footfall scattering centuries of dust. They reached the amphitheater, half-roofless stage sunk, stone benches snapped by roots. Drogon curled atop the central dais, eyes embers in the dark. She climbed into the crook of his forelimb and rested against warm scales, letting his heartbeat lull her. Sleep claimed her swiftly, and in dreams she walked halls of living marble. Torches burning with blue soul fire, dragons roosting in crystal domes, while harpists plucked chords of silver and gold. She woke at dawn to hammering. Real, metallic clangs echoed through the amphitheater. Sunlight slanted through broken arches, gilding motes of dust. Outside on the plaza, men and women hauled debris into sorting heaps: salvage, stone, ash. Dothraki lashed ropes around toppled columns, coaxing their horses to drag the marble free. Missandei oversaw scribes who recorded inscriptions chipped from friezes. Dario barked orders in 3 tongues at once, flashing a grin whenever the queen's gaze brushed him. Daenerys shook ash from her hair and descended. A hush swept the workers as she passed, heads bowing. She did not pause. Reverence could wait. At the southern colonnade, smoke belched from a newly erected forge where unsullied stoked bellows scavenged from shipboard smithies. Molten iron hissed as it met ancient stone molds uncovered in a collapsed workshop. The smell carried her back to Qarth, to Astapor, to Meereen, but this metal would arm no slave masters. These blades would serve creation, not conquest. She examined the molten pour. How fares the casting? The smith, a squat summer islander named Koya Ma, pushed sweat from her brow. The mix is stubborn. Flux impurities from the old ore beds. We need pure obsidian for tempering, or the steel will pit. Obsidian litters the coast, Daenerys said. Grey Worm will assign a party to gather it. Kojama grimaced. What we find is brittle, but I saw veins of black glass in the tunnels beneath the citadel. If we can mine there. Ahead of you, Dario interrupted, arriving with a swagger that scattered sparks from the forge. A rope team pried open a passage. Smells like the belly of a volcano, but it's stable. For now. Show me, Daenerys ordered. They wound through alleys where fresh footprints crisscrossed old fissures. Every corner revealed curiosities: a mosaic of mermaids wrestling sea serpents, a colossus head toppled into a fountain bowl, a petrified fig tree sprouting crystalline leaves. The city felt alive, rousing from centuries of poisoned slumber. The tunnel entrance gaped at the base of a tower whose upper half had sheared away, exposing spiral stairs to open air. Inside, stone steps descended in tight coils, slick with condensation. Sulfur thickened the air. Their torches guttered, coughing blue flames. Daenerys tasted copper on her tongue. They reached a cavern where the ceiling glowed faintly, veins of obsidian catching and amplifying torchlight. Pillars of polished black glass rose like frozen smoke. Between them lay forges, smaller than the ones above, yet impeccably preserved. Etched into the walls were sigils of houses long vanished, surrounding a massive circular door sealed with concentric wheels of pale metal. Dario whistled. A vault. Dragon glass dancing with dragon steel. Consider me impressed. Daenerys approached, palm hovering over the pale metal. Valyrian steel, she guessed, alloyed with something rarer still. The rings bore glyphs. Snarling dragons, shooting stars, twining flames. She traced a pattern. Warmth pulsed back. The door recognized her blood. She pressed both hands flat. A deep click reverberated. The inner wheel rotated, glyphs aligning with grudging speed. Dust puffed from ancient seals. Metal scraped metal, until a final thud echoed like a hammer stroke. The vault yawned open on darkness. Inside flickered faint light. Not torchlight, but a luminescence akin to moon glow caught in crystal. Shelves lined the chamber, each holding scrolls sealed in glass tubes, blades wrapped in oiled silk, vials of shimmering liquid. At the center stood a pedestal supporting a sphere of black stone veined with red, its surface alive with slow, internal embers. Daenerys reached for it. Drogon, waiting at the tunnel mouth, hissed. She paused. Easy, my love. She lifted the sphere. It weighed less than expected, warm as feverish skin. Missandei, breathless with awe, whispered, "Is it a dragon egg?" "Perhaps," Daenerys said, though no egg she had seen pulsed so. "Or a seed of something greater." Behind her, Koja Ma muttered, "That glow could heat a forge tenfold." Dario raised a brow. "Or a city." Daenerys closed her fingers around the sphere. Its heartbeat synced with hers, thumping slow and heavy. Images crowded her mind, dragons coiling through endless vaults, forges stoked by molten rivers, towers spiraling into skies streaked by auroras of green and violet. A promise of rebirth, if only she dared claim it. She returned to the amphitheater as the sun reached zenith. Standing upon the dais, she raised the sphere, so the light struck its veins of crimson fire. Workers paused, turning. Even the dragons stilled, nostrils flaring. "This city is not dead," she said, voice carrying across shattered marble. "Its heart still burns. We will feed that flame. Feed it with our sweat and our blood. Yes, but also with our hope. We will raise halls where ashes lie, plant orchards in blasted courtyards, forge swords that will remain sheathed so long as peace endures." She lowered the sphere. "The doom once ended an age. Let our labor begin one new." Silence greeted her, deep as the sea. Then Drogon spread his wings. He trumpeted, a roar that shook loose pebbles from high arches and sent flocks of ash-white bats spiraling skyward. Valyrian echoed, higher and sharper. Moondancer added her keening cry. Their combined voices spilled over the city, turning every ruin into a bell of stone. The people answered with cheers, whoops, ululating cries in half a dozen tongues. Hammers struck anvils in frenetic rhythm. The plaza thrummed like a great drum, and in its cadence Daenerys heard the heartbeat of Valyria stirring for the first time in 4 centuries. Work accelerated. Unsullied dragged block and tackle into the tunnel, chiseling obsidian pillars into slabs for new ramparts. Dothraki raced across the island gathering driftwood for scaffolding and fuel. Anithi healers harvested herbs sprouting in sulfur-rich soil, their fragrance mixing with forge smoke. And each night, as twin moons rose, dragons crowned the sky in arcs of fire, mapping the new realm with trails of ruby embers. Weeks bled into months. Rain eroded the ash drifts, revealing streets of pearl-flecked stone. Smiths hammered shields embossed with rising suns. Scribes decoded fragments of eldritch scripture, chanting syllables that coaxed glow from petrified braziers. Under Koja Ma's guidance, molten steel poured through rediscovered molds, casting beams light yet unyielding. Skeletons of new towers sprouted around the plaza, ribs of black glass laced with silver supports. From afar they resembled skeletal dragons poised to leap. Up close they hummed with inner heat. Daenerys walked the scaffolds nightly, tracing the bones of her reborn city. She wore no crown, only ash-streaked leather and the smell of smoke. The people greeted her without kneeling. Respect here was measured in sweat. When she passed, they offered news. A terrace cleared, a vault unsealed, a child born beneath a lintel carved with twin dragons intertwined. Each gift she accepted with a nod, committing detail to memory. She knew every archway by touch, every gutter by slope. One dusk, as purple storm clouds bruised the western sky, Missandei found her on the half-finished ramparts. "The census is complete," she said, handing over a cracked wax ledger. 1,1842 souls. Another 100 expected with the next convoy from Neathot. She smiled. "We are a city again." Daenerys paged through names. Unsullied, freedmen, former pit fighters, ironborn deckhands. Beside each, a learned scribe had notated trade. Mason, fisher, midwife, alchemist. "A city," she echoed. "But a city must breathe commerce, diplomacy, song. We need gardens, libraries, theaters, and dragon riders," Missandei added. "Have you chosen the first candidates?" "Soon," Daenerys said. She gazed toward the amphitheater, now roofed in gleaming obsidian slate. Smoke curled from vents cut between scales. a living beast of stone within which the dragons nested. "The bond chooses as much as I," thunder mumbled overhead. Drogon launched from the amphitheater roof, wings clapping against updrafts. Lightning crowned the sky, illuminating him in strobing white. He circled the city once, then glided beyond the cliffs toward the smoking horizon. Valyrian and Moondancer followed in tight formation. Their silhouettes vanished into cloud. Missandei shivered. "They hunt the fires that birth them." "They scout," Daenerys corrected. "They map the veins beneath these isles. There is power sleeping below." She closed the ledger. "When they return, we will begin the next forging." "Of what?" Missandei asked. "Oh, of," Daenerys said. She turned to the storm. Rain began, cold and laden with salt, washing the ash from new-laid stones. In its cleansing patter, she imagined thunderous applause from ghosts of dragonlords, watching their scion reclaim what they had squandered. That night she climbed to the highest terrace of the tallest unfinished tower, a skeletal spire of obsidian ribs bound with silver. Wind whipped her braid loose. Far across the dark sea glimmered scattered lanterns of the fleet ferrying provisions from Neath. Clouds churned, shot through by sporadic lightning. In each flash she glimpsed her dragons carving loops through vapor, sparks flickering at their maws. She raised the ember-veined sphere. At her mental summons, Drogon banked and dove, streaking fire that crackled like ripped silk. Lightning answered his flame, lancing from storm to sea, inking the waves with reflected firelight. Valyrian reared back, exhaling a cone of emerald blaze, while Moondancer's silver gout dappled the rain in molten pearls. Heaven and hell mingled where their fires kissed. Daenerys felt the sphere throb. She spoke a single Valyrian syllable, one she had plucked from a half-translated scroll. It tasted of iron and smoke. The sphere's veins brightened, light coiling along her arms. She squeezed her eyes shut, hearing not thunder but a pulse, steady and immense, as though the earth's heart answered her own. When she opened them, the storm clouds had parted around the dragons, forming a ragged ring. Within, starlight cascaded unhindered, a perfect round window onto infinity. The dragons hovered inside that celestial eye, 3 blazing comets frozen in the firmament. Lightning limned their wings, rain hissed on their scales. For a breathless span the world hung between ruin and rebirth, suspended on the tip of Daenerys' raised hand. Then Drogon roared, not a battle cry, but an anthem. His siblings echoed, harmonizing in chords that vibrated the bones of the tower. The sphere's glow subsided to a warm pulse, in rhythm with the dragon's song. Daenerys lowered her arm. The storm collapsed, rain drumming anew upon roofs and ramparts, but its fury felt tamed, subservient. She exhaled, realizing she had not drawn breath since the first syllable. Behind her, footsteps scraped. Dario ascended the final ladder, soaked to the skin. "I see you've taught the sky to dance." "Not taught," she said. "Reminded." He shook water from his hair. "Whatever you call it, the men below are scraping their jaws off the flagstones. They'll follow you into any inferno after tonight." "Nay, they must follow themselves," she replied. "I am flame. They are the forge." Dario studied her, the storm's afterglow reflecting in his eyes. "And what will you forge first, my queen?" She faced the newborn city. Fires guttered along scaffolds. Shadows of workers marched ant-like across beams. Beyond, the plaza mosaics glimmered under fresh rain, the 3-headed dragon reborn in reflected torchlight. Somewhere beneath those stones, miners chipped at obsidian veins. Somewhere above, dragons circled. All gears turned toward dawn. "Tomorrow," she said, "we test the hatcheries." Dario raised a brow. "More eggs?" "Perhaps." She touched the sphere. "Or something the world has never named." He chuckled, part wonder, part fear. "Then, may the gods keep pace." Daenerys smiled. A small curve, sharpened by purpose. Lightning played around the spire's tip, painting her silver hair in fleeting halos. Below, Valyria's ruins breathed steam, as though waking from a fever dream. And though night still ruled, A faint pink smudge on the eastern horizon promised the day's inevitable ascent. She descended the tower before dawn, spear cradled to her chest, ready to chart the next line in her city's unfinished song. Far behind her, the storm rolled away, its vanishing rumble a distant applause for a play just beginning. Kea. Wind hissed through the skeletal crown of the unfinished tower, carrying the briny breath of the summer sea into every seam of fresh-laid mortar. Below, pre-dawn purple washed the plazas in soft amethyst, making the obsidian ribs of half-built structures seem forged from twilight itself. The city no longer looked entirely dead. It resembled a colossal creature pausing between heartbeats, ribs expanding with wary optimism, lungs filling with smoke and salt-clean air alike. Daenerys walked the perimeter rampart alone, her boots whispering against new Valyrian steel plates, hammered only days before. Each sheet still held the faint pattern of rippling water where the smiths, Kojima chief among them, had quenched them in brine drawn from fissures under the island. She traced the pattern with her fingertips as she progressed, feeling the subtle warmth an hour before sunrise. Steel that remembered fire, Kojima had called it. Steel eager, as though longing for purpose. To the east, a glow touched the horizon, a pale brilliance inflaming the low clouds like coals stirred by a poker. Daenerys inhaled, tasting sulfur carried on the offshore wind. Beneath the mineral tang a subtler aroma lurked, floral, almost sweet. Ash roses. Seedlings sprung unbidden from cracks in old promenades. They opened only at night, closing their sooty petals at dawn. She knelt to examine one sprouting at the foot of a parapet. Charcoal red, edges tipped with gray frost, droplets of rain still trembling on its velvet throat. Beauty coaxed from ruin. She murmured a silent vow to protect such small wonders, even as she hunted greater ones. Footsteps approached, measured, armored. Gray worm emerged from an arch, spear butt clicking softly. He paused, eyes sweeping the battlements for threat, then relaxed the tiniest fraction when he found none. "My queen," he said. "Report," she replied, rising. Night patrols encountered movement near the southern fissure. No contact. Possibly wyverns drawn by forge heat. His tone remained even, but Daenerys sensed the slight tension he always held whenever speaking of scaled creatures, not entirely under her rule. "Drogon will sweep the southern cliffs after dawn," she said. "Ensure torches remain lit until first light." Grey Worm nodded. "Work details assemble in 1 hour. Kojima requests your presence in the deep forge. She claims the obsidian veins sing differently today." Daenerys allowed herself a ghost of a smile. In Valyria, stone could sing, steel could breathe, and ghosts might very well stalk forgotten hallways. She gestured for him to accompany her. They descended a flight of spiral stairs still warm from yesterday's welding torches, stepping onto the main boulevard that once bore processions of Dragonlord. Now it bustled with early laborers, Dothraki leading shaggy silver horses dragging timber sledges, Naathi herbalists bearing baskets of yellow root, tiny knots of freedmen pushing wheelbarrows full of shattered statuary destined for Kojima's furnaces. They parted instinctively, many touching fingers to hearts, some muttering a quick Mhisa in a dozen accents. At the boulevard's center, a freshly erected crane of blackened cedar groaned as its crew hoisted a slate slab toward a waiting framework. Another tooth in Valyria's rising skyline. Sparks sprayed from smiths, tack welding support hooks. The newborn city smelled of minting coins and warm bread, sweat and citrus oil, used to preserve new pulley ropes. Life, messy and relentless. They reached the amphitheater's cavernous rear entrance where a lift platform waited. A broad disc of ironwood bound by chain hoists, counterweights clicking in deep shafts. 2 unsullied manned the winches. At Daenerys' nod the platform descended smoothly into Valyria's throat, torches mounted on its rim painting the shaft walls, in flickering bands of gold. The air grew hotter, heavier, alive with bass reverberations like far-off drums. Kojima's realm. They disembarked onto an antechamber hewn from glossy black glass. Beyond an arched doorway, the main forge blazed. 5 coal mouths gaped in a row, each 20 feet wide, stomachs stuffed with shimmering fuel drawn from the island's molten arteries. Bellows the size of fishing smacks rose and fell by water wheels fed from subterranean canals. The breath they exhaled roared through the coals, sending rivulets of orange cascading across furnace floors. Kojama strode toward them, soot-masked, eyes incandescent in the furnace light. She bowed at the waist. "It wakes, Khaleesi," she rasped, voice raw from heat and exhilaration. "Listen." She rapped her hammer against a low, tubular protrusion of obsidian jutting from the wall like a frozen ripple. A clear note rang out. Neither metal nor glass. Something in between, resonant, lingering. Daenerys pressed her palm to the vein. The surface thrummed faintly, vibrations prickling her bones. What changed? "The seam's pitch shifted," Kojama said. If a cavity behind it emptied or filled. 2 days ago the note sat a full tone lower. Something is moving beneath, liquid rock, maybe gas pockets, or something older. Her grin flashed under soot. "We break through, we learn." "Dangerous," Grey Worm warned. His gaze combed the ceiling's webs of hairline cracks. "Everything worth forging demands risk," Kojama countered. She pointed toward a newly cooled ingot propped on iron trestles. "But behold the reward." The block, 8 feet long, glimmered with subtle crimson whorls winding through polished black. Jagged runes, draconic script, etched its face, not carved by chisel but grown, as if the metal crystallized around symbols spoken by fire. Daenerys brushed a rune. Heat curled up her fingertips yet did not burn. "Has anyone read them?" "The scribes try." The symbols shift, slowly, but they change. Kojama tapped a different rune. "That one resembled a claw yesterday. Today it looks like a flame." Daenerys felt the ember-veined sphere at her belt grow warmer. The hatcheries, she thought. Perhaps the city's own bones responded to the heartbeat she awakened atop the tower. "Cut a slice," she ordered. "Quench in seawater, polish, and bring it to the plaza by midday." "I will test its metal." Kojama bowed, barking commands to her crew even before Daenerys turned away. Grey Worm followed her back to the lift, lighting the path with a handheld brazier. "Your people trust these fires," he observed, "yet fear the unseen below." "Fear is healthy," she replied. "It teaches respect, not retreat." She met his eyes. "Has the council reached decision on the Dragon Rider candidates?" He squared his shoulders. 20 names approved. 5 unsullied, 3 Uniti, 4 Dothraki, 3 Wintertown volunteers from the last convoy, and 5 former free companies seeking redemption. A faint purse of lips indicated what he thought of Sellswords. Roles remain unfilled. Some will not survive the testing. Many, she corrected softly. But the dragons must choose. Ensure candidates understand the cost. They do. The platform rose, chains rattling like a distant smithy chorus. Emerging onto the amphitheater's upper level, they found morning in full bloom. Sunrise setting every shard of obsidian scaffold aflame with rose gold fire. Dragons spiraled overhead, chasing thermals. Moondancer circled lower than usual, her chalk-white wings throwing pearly reflections across shattered statues. Valyrian perched on a half-repaired aqueduct, talons flexing as he followed her lazily with golden eyes. Content for now, Drogon glided over the central plaza and landed with a thunderous clap, wings furling as gracefully as banners. The crowd fled his downdraft, yet many paused to gawk. Even after months, all remained. He turned his colossal head toward Daenerys, red gaze narrowing. She touched her mind to his, an ember meeting a bonfire, and felt his hunger, not for meat, but for challenge. She motioned. Drogon advanced, claws gouging white sparks from volcanic stone. She swung onto his neck, gripping ridges polished smooth by countless flights. Grey Worm stepped back, saluting. She guided Drogon skyward with a wordless tug of intention. Air roared, city shrinking beneath. Moondancer chirped and banked to join them. Valyrian rumbled and followed, loose formations spread across the sunrise. They crossed the southern cliffs in minutes. Steam curled from vents along the escarpment. Volcanic breath meeting cool sea air. Below, the fissure gaped, an irregular canyon burrowed by ancient eruptions. Farther in, spines of jagged rock protruded like fossilized ribs. Shadows shifted against those ribs, winged shapes flitted in narrow eddies. Wyverns, smaller cousins, lesser cousins, thin patagia, arrow faces, lacking the second set of four limbs that granted true dragons such fearsome dexterity. Yet they could bite, scratch, poison. Daenerys counted half a dozen, maybe more hiding among crags. Drogon felt her assessment and released a growl vibrating through bone. "This land is ours," that growl insisted. She guided him lower. Wind screamed up the fissure. Sulfur stung her eyes. One wyvern launched, membrane wings translucent in sunlight, tail barbed like a scorpion. Drogon bellowed a challenge and dove. Claws as long as spears sliced in, snapping the lesser beast's wing. It spiraled screaming into mists. Another lunged from behind. Drogon flicked his tail, spined club cracking the wyvern's neck with a wet crunch. Moondancer darted to worry a third, silver flame blistering its hide. Valyrian seized a fourth midair, jaws crushing ribs. Gore spattered the rocks. Daenerys felt Drogon's exultation but tempered it with restraint. No needless slaughter. Drive them, claim territory. She projected an image of the fissure empty, safe for miners. Drogon responded with a snort of grudging obedience. Banking wide, scarlet fire washing cliffside niches. Wyverns shrieked and fled inland. When the skies cleared, she had him hover. Below, carrion drifted on hot updrafts, charred feathers shedding sparks. Ash roses would sprout crimson from those carcasses by next moon. She inhaled, letting victory and sulfur intermingle. Drogon's mind hummed. Home. She opened hers wider, sending reassurance. The nest grows. The brood will swell. He landed atop a basalt promontory to roar ownership, a proclamation rolling across labyrinthine valleys. Somewhere beyond sight, a subterranean boom answered, deep and languid, the land acknowledging its new sovereign. Satisfied, she signaled retreat. 3 dragons ascended, slicing through ragged cloud to return to the burgeoning citadel. The plaza pulsed like a forge heart by midday, steam vents igniting at intervals as new plumbing sought equilibrium. Daenerys landed at the ramp's edge, descending amid clanging hammers and shouted measurements. A wooden dais had been raised near the tri-headed mosaic, currently draped in crimson cloth. Scribes flanked it on stools, parchment ready. In the crowd, gathered beneath awnings of woven reeds, stood the 20 candidates, each wearing simple armbands dyed deep indigo. Beside them, Kojima waited, sweat still streaking her temples despite the recently rinsed face. 2 burly assistants bore between them a slab of the living metal slice Daenerys had commissioned, its runic skin winking like a wet knife. Daenerys crossed to the dais, Drogon stalking behind before folding into a sphinx beside the mosaic. Silence swept the assembly, except for a hiss of cooling stone. She faced the candidates, women and men of disparate lineage. A gray-eyed, unsullied veteran with torso crisscrossed by whip scars. A broad-shouldered Wintertown girl whose cheeks reddened simply meeting the queen's gaze. Aksha, an orphan with wrists tattooed in curling leaves. Kemra, an elderly Dothraki storyteller missing his left hand yet standing defiant. Hope and trepidation braided through them like sparks in oil. Daenerys raised her voice, low yet carrying. When Valyria fell, dragons perished, not for lack of flame, but for lack of trust. Their riders had become tyrants who thought themselves masters of fire rather than its stewards. The doom was their answer. She let executioner, quiet, settle. We will not repeat that sin. Dragons will not be chained to greed or vanity. They will bond only to those whose will is tempered by purpose, whose courage bends to compassion. She signaled. Kojama's assistants heaved the metal slice upright. Gasps rippled. Runes crawled across its surface so slowly, one had to stare seconds to notice. Yet the movement felt alive, like ink diffusing in water. This metal, drank the veins of the island. Daenerys said, "It will serve as judgment." She produced the ember vein sphere, setting it against the slab where a circular cavity awaited. The sphere fit perfectly. At once both objects blazed. From within the sphere filaments of crimson branched into the runes, illuminating them, forging words none present could read yet all somehow understood. Courage, mercy, balance, sacrifice. The heat radiating was intense, yet bore no sting. One by one, Daenerys commanded, "Place your palm upon the metal. Speak no oath. Let it know you." Silence. Then the first unsullied veteran stepped forward, helm under his arm. He pressed his hand flat. A sharp, sizzling hiss. In the glow his eyes fluttered. Seeing visions Daenerys could not. After 3 heartbeats, he jerked away, breathing hard. Where his palm had touched, runes glowed pale blue, then faded to black. He stepped aside, face unreadable. Next, the Wintertown girl. She reached. Her fingers trembled, then steadied. Light shimmered, soft gold, beneath her hand, forming a halo that lingered after she withdrew. She blinked tears she had not expected, smiling shyly. Each candidate repeated the act. Colors varied: indigo, russet, emerald. Some brightened momentarily before dulling into gray. Others burned luminous, refusing to dim until the next palm made contact. The crowd watched in hushed awe. Khemra the Dothraki elder came last. He pressed his one good hand to the metal and laughed aloud as crimson shot upward, runes glowing the exact hue of Drogon's flame. He withdrew, still chuckling. "Old bones yet hot," he declared in thick common tongue. Daenerys retrieved the sphere. The slab cooled, runes now silent. She scanned the candidates. Those whose touch brightened gold or crimson will proceed at dawn. Others will serve in capacities no less vital. Smiths need strong arms. Healers need steady souls. She raised her chin, addressing all assembled. "We are sculpting an order, not a hierarchy. Every brick, every cup of water, every lullaby hummed to a child builds this city's heart." Cheering swelled. Kojama grinned like a smith hammering a perfect weld. The chosen candidates, golds and crimsons, the murmuring crowd soon named them, were led away by unsullied escorts toward the amphitheater to begin dragon lore instruction. Posture, voice modulation, the subtle art of projecting calm through terror. Daenerys stepped down. Drogon nudged her shoulder gently, exhaling a puff of heat that ruffled her hair. "Soon," she assured him. He huffed, smoke curling. Night draped Valyria in cobalt velvet. Lanterns of vulcanized glass dangled from eaves, each lit by captured fire mites. Tiny ember flies discovered in the tunnels, their abdomens glowing amber. They drifted inside the lamps, requiring neither oil nor wick. Children chased their reflections along alley walls, laughter airborne. Daenerys crossed the embryonic market quarter, a grid of stalls defined by rope lines and chalked measurements on flagstones. Merchants from Neathlis, even cautious Kuhor, tied their ships at improvised jetties now, drawn by rumors of phoenix metal and dragon-guarded safe harbors. They brought cloth bolts, peppercorn, barrels of lamprey pie. In return they sought obsidian carvings, shards of pre-doom porcelain, slivers of the new alloy, though Kojama rationed those like royal jewels. Commerce hummed, first faint heartbeat of political leverage. At the far edge of the quarter stood a tent larger than most houses, dyed midnight blue, spangled with flecks of crushed pearl that shimmered like stars. Within waited Jorah Mormont, once exiled knight turned envoy, recently returned from Westeros, aboard a sleek skiff. He rose as she entered, lantern shadows carving grooves in his weathered face. "Khaleesi, Ser Jorah." She studied him, armor scratched by travel, cloak smelling of sea. "Your message said you carry tidings immediate and fraught." He bowed. "I bring visitors who request audience." At her nod, he beckoned. 4 figures stepped from behind a curtained partition. First came a rangy woman wearing a maester's chain, links of copper, silver, electrum. Dark of skin, pale of eye. She bowed halfway. Mara of Old Town, once of the Citadel, now freelance archivist. Her expression implied she had shed more than a title when she left the order. Behind her loomed a bull-shouldered man clad in maester black, trimmed with crimson. His chain rattled. Iron for warcraft, gold for economics, black iron for ravenry. Karl Varos, he announced curtly, envoy of Archmaester Ambrose. Third stepped a youth, perhaps 15, garbed as a squire but bearing no insignia. His nervous swallow was audible. Tommen Waters, he stuttered, gaze darting to the floor. And last, a woman cloaked in gray sealskin, hood pushed back to reveal hair silver blonde as Daenerys' own, though streaked darker near the roots. Eyes of deep sea green regarded the queen without flinch. "Arianne of House Targaryen," she said simply. Silence eclipsed the tent. Drogon, lounging outside, growled. His shadow loomed through canvas. Daenerys felt the blood memory stir. House Targaryen branches scattered after the Blackfire rebellions, each twig pruned by centuries. Yet here stood a living offshoot, undeniable. Arianne held up bare hands. "I claim no rights of succession. I seek sanctuary for my blood, knowledge for my mind, and service for my heart. That is all." "Mastery," Yora spoke. She sailed from the stepstones with these companions. "The Citadel's envoys bear offers." Karl Varos cleared his throat. "Old Town proposes scholar exchange. Maesters, artisans, healers, trained minds for your libraries in return for access to your anomalies." He flicked gaze toward the ember-veined sphere resting on a tabaret. "Specimens, observations, no weapons." He stressed that too emphatically. Daenerys did not answer immediately. She considered the three. Mara observed her in turn, curious, unafraid. The boy bit his lip, knuckles pale. Arianne's expression was calm, but hunger lurked behind her eyes. Hunger for belonging, perhaps purpose. "What of Westeros?" Daenerys asked. Varos shifted. "The regent in King's Landing repairs docks ruined by dragonfire. Famine looms after poor harvest. Many small folk whisper you will return. Fewer highborn welcome the idea." He paused. "Yet some houses send discreet feelers, grain for obsidian, ships for steel." Daenerys walked a slow circle round them, cat-like. "My focus is here, for now. Valyria must rise steadfast before I dare leave its cradle. But I do not forget Westeros." She stopped before Tommen Waters. "Why come you?" He swallowed. "Dreams, your grace. I see fire under the sea, towers of glass black growing like trees. I heard a voice, yours I think, calling across storms." He flushed, certain he sounded mad. Prophetic dreams in a bastard boy? She filed that fragment away. To Varos she said, "The Citadel withheld scrolls on dragons, erased lore of glass gardens, branded fireweavers as charlatans. Now they come seeking. Arrogance lingers." Mara smiled faintly. "Some of us left because of that arrogance. I do not speak for the Archmaesters. I speak for history begging to be exhumed." Daenerys faced Arianne. "And you?" "I ran from men who would cage Dragonseed for ransom," she said. "I found allies in these three. We risked storms and pirates to reach you." She knelt then, palm brushing the sandy floor. "If you will have me, I will raise spires, tutor hatchlings, anything." Daenerys sensed no guile. "Rise." She turned to Varos. "Tell Old Town, scholars are welcome, meddlers are not. Every envoy must leave chains behind. They're symbolic and literal ones. Knowledge shared. Sovereignty unchallenged." "That's batten." Varos inclined head stiffly. "I will carry the word." "To prove faith," Daenerys continued. "The Citadel will send glassworks masters to teach our apprentices the craft of lens making." "Agree. And the first tranche of obsidian carvings will travel north for study." She arched a brow. "Disagree, and Valyria remains a closed book." Varos hesitated, then nodded. "I believe they will agree. Mara, you will stay. Tommen, too. You will be tested for the gift of dragon dreaming." The boy's eyes widened. She addressed Arianne last. You speak Valyrian. Enough to curse in, she admitted. You will improve. Report to Miss Ande at dawn. She coordinates language cohorts. She paused. Wing blood may call to wing bone. Be prepared. Ariane's lips parted in wonder. Thank you. Daenerys dismissed them with a tilt of chin. As they departed, Jorah lingered. You tread many paths, he murmured. I weave them, she corrected. Paths run parallel until a spider draws them together. Spiders have enemies, he noted. So do queens. She touched the sphere, feeling it cool now, dormant. And queens have dragons. She glanced at him. How fares Bear Island? A shadow crossed his face. Still healing. Winter's scars linger. Send shipments of ash rose seeds. They thrive in hardship. He smiled, soft, proud. They'll remind my people that broken soil can bloom. He bowed and withdrew, leaving her with glowing lanterns and the hush of possibilities. 3 days later, dawn again found her on Drogon's back. But now 20 aspirants rode behind her in tight lines, astride leather-harnessed yokes strapped to the beasts of burden they knew. Horses, mules, even a stoic ibex goat for the Enemethi girl Aksha, whose frailty belied stubborn spirit. They ascended a terraced ridge, overlooking the amphitheater where Valerian and Moondancer lounged. The ceremony of choosing. Daenerys dismounted. Candidates formed a semicircle. She spoke softly. The wind carried each word down the slopes to onlookers massed along scaffolds. Approach each dragon in stillness. Offer no command, only greeting. If fire tempers a blade, humility tempers power. Should a dragon bow his head, you touch his brow and speak your birth name. If he turns away, you return to your life unshamed. If he burns you, she met their eyes. Know that it is swifter than fear. No one flinched. She gestured to Valerian. The Winter Town girl stepped first. She walked barefoot, snow-pale toes against volcanic rock. Valerian watched, slitted pupils widening. She paused 3 paces off, bowed, murmured something inaudible. The green dragon tilted his head, nostrils flaring. Quiet eternity. Then he dipped his crown. She reached, palms trembling, and touched his scales. Valerian exhaled a gust that fluttered her hair, nothing more. The crowd erupted in cheers. Next went the unsullied veteran. He approached Moondancer. The lithe dragon blinked with opal eyes, curious. He offered a stiff salute. Moondancer chirped and nudged his chest. Accepted. 2 bonds formed. Khemra chose a Drogon. Many gasped. Folly, they thought. An elder missing a hand seeking the mightiest. He hobbled forward, shoulders proudly back. Drogon's eyes narrowed, ember glow assessing. For long heartbeats, nothing moved. Then Drogon swung his massive head to face Daenerys, rumbling a question. She opened her mind, listened. Drogon asked, "Will this one suffice?" She projected respect, laced with invitation. Drogon huffed, scorching the rocks beside Khemra's feet. But the flame curved, missing flesh. He lowered his skull. Khemra laughed incredibly loud, stamping good hand to brow and salute. He set the stump gently upon Drogon's snout. The great dragon's pupils widened, as though seeing bravery etched in absence more clearly than in flesh. A bond sealed by shared wounds. 5 more bonds formed before noon. Those turned away bowed to the crowd and walked back amongst friends, welcomed by proud applause. None were burned. The one Dothraki colt fainted when Moondancer sniffed him. He woke sheepish. The new riders were led below for fitting of provisional saddles. Months of training awaited. Sky drills, emergency dismounts, feeding protocols, mind-melding meditations taught by Daenerys herself. A new order indeed, hatched from hope rather than entitlement. That evening, when shadows stretched jagged across the plazas, Daenerys climbed a parapet to find Arianne seated cross-legged, poring over a copperplate codex depicting ancient Valyrian irrigation glyphs. She looked up. The canals once channeled warm water through glass hothouses. Roses bloomed in winter. We could replicate. Then, we will. Daenerys said, and joined her, unrolling a map of volcanic vents. Together, they traced routes where warmed water could flow under the fledgling gardens planted on roofs. Ash roses, yes, but also citrus, tomatoes, rare lucerne for warhorses. Life stitched with warmth. Bells, cast anew from melted temple debris, tolled thrice. Shift change at the forges. Sparks rose into evening violet like fireflies. Far above, 7 dragons, Drogon, Valyrian, Moondancer, and 4 hatchlings scarcely the size of warhorses, wove lazy spirals, outlining constellations unborn. Every wingbeat scattered flecks of firelight across cloud bottoms. Daenerys watched, heart swelling. Each dragon etched a note in Valyria's reborn song. In that celestial choir, she detected harmony but also dissonance. A call from the deep south, perhaps wildfire storms sweeping summer isles. Whispers from Westeros of cold iron factions rearming. Pulses beneath Valyria's crust where magma lunged hungrily. Threads of conflict awaited, but she greeted them like a smith welcomes spitting embers. Opportunities to weld stronger seams. A light footstep. Missandei bearing a scroll case sealed in glittering obsidian. "A raven from Bravos," she announced. "The Iron Bank proposes terms of credit, generous if we guarantee or exports." Daenerys laughed softly. The world circles, sniffing opportunity like carrion crows around a lion pride. She took the case. "Let them come. We have claws yet." She gazed over the shimmering city. Sparks burst from unfinished turrets where Kojama's crews hammered night shift. Hammers striking iron rang like distant drums. She whispered a line from an old Bravosi play she once heard on the streets of Meereen. "Forge me a crown that burns but never scathes." Not a literal crown, but a city, a people, a dream of balance between flame and flesh. Drogon's mind brushed hers, contentment tinged with alertness. Storm cells gathered far at sea, lightning crawling inside their germinating bellies. He offered readiness. She answered with patience. "Not yet, my heart. We have seeds to bury and spires to raise. Let storms rehearse their fury. When they finally reach our shores, we will greet them with songs of glass and steel." Below, lanterns bloomed one by one. Fire might light, dancing along avenues repaired and those still broken. Music drifted. Someone had fashioned a lute from driftwood and obsidian offcuts. The tune uncertain, hopeful. Near the main forge, Kojama tested a chime of polished glass rods. Each rang a note of ringing sunrise. Children giggled as flitting emberflies escaped lamps, painting erratic constellations in the air. Daenerys closed her eyes, listening to her city breathe. Warm wind filled her cloak like a sail. She sensed tomorrow stacked behind the horizon. Treaties, betrayals, migrations, perhaps return to Westeros with a fleet bearing the sigil of a tri-headed dragon reborn in obsidian and starlight. But today belonged to voices echoing in newly cleared forums, to dragons scaling unseen thermals, to roses blooming black and red in the cracks of doom-blasted streets. Today belonged to hammers shaping tomorrow's peace. She opened her eyes, letting their violet fire mirror the glinting forge lights. "We begin again," she whispered to the wind, to the stones, to the ghosts. "And this time, we remember why." He. Beneath a sky smudged violet and gold, dawn shimmered over the broken teeth of Valyria's skyline, catching on the newborn ramparts like dew on spider silk. The sea was still, black as hammered iron, and the breath of the city rose in columns of smoke and song. Daenerys stood atop the southern tower, a silhouette haloed by the light of 1,000 forges, her hair loose in the wind, eyes fixed on the slow, sure growth below. Another night had ended with a chorus of hammers and dragonfire. The city was expanding with a kind of hunger, walls lengthening, towers creeping higher, open wounds of the doom scabbing over with new stone and steel. Everywhere life thrummed. Laborers sang as they hauled timbers. Masons daubed volcanic mortar between blocks cut from the living bones of the island. Healers strung wind chimes of glass across the hospital doorways. Their music said to ward off the fevers that haunted the coastal air. Valyria, long dead, was learning to breathe again. Drogon perched nearby, his tail dangling off the edge of the parapet, eyes half-lidded with pleasure as the sunlight warmed his scales. From below came the shrill cry of Moondancer, rousing the hatchlings from their sleep beneath the amphitheater. 4 dragons now, the first clutch hatched in centuries, each larger than a stallion, their scales still soft and mottled, but their voices loud enough to shake the dust from the eaves. A flock of ships lay at anchor beyond the breakwater. Nii spice barges, Lyseni cogs, squat galleys from the summer isles, and a pair of tall Bravosi merchantmen that gleamed with freshly painted hulls. Their crews eyed the city with awe and trepidation, waiting for Daenerys' signal to offload their goods. The Bravosi captain had sent a gift, a casket of gold, and an offer of credit so vast, it made even Dario's jaw slacken. The world was watching, and the world wanted to buy a piece of the future, if only a sliver. Daenerys descended from the tower, her steps light and unhurried, the path before her clearing as she passed. People did not kneel, they bowed their heads or pressed a fist to heart, murmuring, "Misa," or simply smiling, pride and hope mingled in their faces. She paused to greet a party of miners returning from the obsidian tunnels, their arms blackened to the elbow, carrying baskets of gleaming glassy shards. "How deep have you gone?" she asked, her Valyrian rolling off her tongue with the ease of long practice. 6 levels, Khaleesi," answered their foreman, a barrel-chested Norvoshi with a grin missing 2 teeth. "The veins twist downward, but there's a new branch, soft stone black as sin, running with water warm as blood." She nodded, thinking of the ancient maps, the prophecies, the lost legends whispered of rivers beneath the ground. "Mark it. Use only seasoned men below the 4th level. If you strike gas, withdraw at once." He bowed, relief on his face. In the new Valyria, every miner, every laborer, every child was precious. There would be no return to the ways of the old blood, no more slaves, no more castes. The city's lifeblood would be its people, and each would rise as high as skill and courage allowed. In the plaza, a crowd was gathering, drawn by the promise of spectacle. Kojima stood by the casting pit, her arms streaked with sweat and soot, ready to pour the first great bell of the reborn city. Beside her waited the chosen dragon riders, those few bold souls who had survived not only the trial of the rune steel, but the greater ordeal of approaching the dragons themselves. Some bore fresh bandages on arms or necks. All held a gleam of pride and terror in their eyes. The first of the hatchlings, a copper-brown female, tottered into the sunlight, flanked by 2 unsullied, whose discipline alone kept their knees from knocking. The little dragon flared her wings, shrieked at the crowd, then bounded up onto the low dais, tail whipping, eyes darting for her mother. Drogon crooned from above, and the hatchling stilled, gaze locked on her queen. Daenerys raised her hand, the signal for silence. All eyes turned to her. She spoke in Valyrian, her voice steady and full, carrying across the plaza. "Today we name our firstborn child of Valyria restored. Let all the world hear it. Dragons have returned, not as masters of death, but as guardians of life. This city will not be ruled by fear. Its bells shall ring not for conquest, but for hope." Kojima stepped forward, hefting a mold inscribed with the sigil of House Targaryen and the glyphs of every house and guild that had pledged to Daenerys' dream. The molten bronze, infused with powdered obsidian and flecks of the new living steel, poured in a shimmering arc, steam and flame dancing as metal met sand. The crowd cheered, a sound like a tidal wave crashing against the old city's grief. The ceremony was followed by a feast, tables laden with dried fish and fresh greens from the city's first rooftop gardens, salted mutton and flatbread from Bravos, fruit preserves from Neath. There were songs in 6 languages and toasts raised to Daenerys and to the dragons. Children darted through the legs of their elders, some clutching wax tablets inscribed with their first lessons in Valyrian script. "What?" The hatchlings grew restless, snapping at each other, their games more dangerous than those of any wolf pup. The chosen riders kept their distance, watching, learning the subtle moods of their charges. There would be months, years, of training before any but the bravest dared to mount a young dragon's back. But the bond was forming, slow and inexorable as sunrise. Later, as twilight deepened, Daenerys walked the new avenues alone. She passed the shadow of the old Senate, where scribes and architects worked by lantern light, measuring, arguing, planning the layout of new districts. She passed the barracks where Grey Worm drilled the city's defenders, unsullied and freeborn standing shoulder to shoulder in ranks. She passed the temple, roofless, its walls painted with murals showing a vision of a future where no gods demanded blood, only gratitude for each new day. On the hill above the amphitheater, a ring of stones marked the new hatchery. Here, Kojima and Mara the archivist experimented with eggs and embers, heating the sand with carefully channeled steam, the process guided by old scrolls and new intuition. 3 more eggs lay nestled in the dark, veins glowing faintly red in the firelight. Daenerys crouched beside them, laying her hand on the largest. She whispered words in High Valyrian, a lullaby remembered from a mother she barely knew. The egg pulsed, warmth spreading beneath her palm. The song in her head grew clearer, a memory not her own, a vision of dragons rising through pillars of cloud, shadow, and fire twined. She drew back, breathless, and found Mara watching her with keen, wondering eyes. "The city responds to you," the maester said. "The forges burn hotter, the glass gardens sprout more vigorously. Even the springs run clearer on the days you walk their banks. You are becoming the heart of this place, your grace." Daenerys smiled, tired but sincere. "I am only its caretaker. The city will outlive us all, but not without you," Mara said, then turned back to her notes, brow furrowed in thought. That night, as the city drifted toward sleep, Daenerys convened the first full council in the domed chamber above the forges. The room was warm, the air thick with the scent of hot iron and night-blooming roses. Missandei presided over the records, Dario and Grey Worm at either side, Kojima and Mara seated among the guildmasters and ship captains. Even Arianne and Tommen Waters, new to power, had places at the table. She called the meeting to order with a single phrase: "We are not the old Valyria. Let us act as new people." Reports followed, prosperous, worrying, hopeful by turns. There was news of pirates driven from the southern coves by Dothraki outriders, of Enithi healers curing fevers with herbs found only in the old glass gardens, of iron shipments from the summer isles delayed by storms. The Braavosi wanted a deeper harbor dredged and offered 100 skilled workers for the privilege. The Lyseni offered marble and glass blowers. The Norvoshi sent wool and letters of fealty. The hardest news came from Mara, who laid out a map with new fissures marked in crimson ink. The old tunnels beneath the city are shifting. Some are blocked by lava flows, others by ancient debris. If we wish to expand, we must risk the deeper passages. There are rumors of things living down there. Serpents, perhaps, or worse. Nadero. Dario leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Serpents or treasures, I wager both. Shall I lead an expedition, Khaleesi?" She shook her head. "No glory hunting. We will map with care, use rope and runners. If the tunnels are as old as the legends claim, their secrets can wait a few more months. Life above the earth comes first." There was murmured assent, but the mood sobered. Everyone knew the city's foundations were as unstable as its future. Kojima proposed a solution. "Let us use the dragons. Let them clear passages with their flame. Burn the miasma from the deep places. They are our guardians as well as our pride." Grey Worm nodded. "With scouts ahead and fire behind, we may drive out danger before men ever set foot." Daenerys agreed. "We'll organize a team, riders and dragons together. But only after the hatchlings can fly strong enough. No needless risk." The meeting ended on a note of cautious optimism. As the council filed out, Missandei lingered. "There is one more matter," she said softly, sliding a folded letter across the table. "A raven from Westeros, the Stark girl, Sansa, has written." Daenerys' heart jolted. She opened the letter, scanning the neat script. "To Queen Daenerys, rebuilder of Valyria. Word of your deeds spreads even to the coldest corners of the north. There are those here who curse your name, but more who hope. Winter is long, and our fields are bare, our halls thinly garrisoned. Should you seek friends in Westeros, you will find them in the north. If you would have peace, offer it. If you would have counsel, seek it. We are not so proud as our fathers. Sansa Stark, Lady of Winterfell. She read it twice, then pressed it to her lips, thinking of lost friends, bitter winters, a world that might yet be healed. We are remembered, she whispered. She folded the letter and set it among her treasures. In the following days, the city's life accelerated. Braavosi engineers arrived, sketching docks and seawalls with precise, merchant-minded efficiency. Anathi gardeners cleared more rooftops, laying soil and planting new terraces of tomatoes, squash, and purple corn. Missandei assembled a school in the shadow of the amphitheater, where children learned letters and numbers by day, and stories of dragons and peace by night. The first glass garden opened, a dome of steel ribs and obsidian panels, filled with steam heated by dragon fire, piped from the forges. Inside, a riot of color and fragrance, climbing roses, lemons, and the first white peaches. It became a symbol of the city's future. Fragile, beautiful, endlessly hungry for warmth. On the day of the glass garden's dedication, Daenerys led the council and the people inside. The air was thick with perfume, dew shimmering on every leaf. In the center stood the great bell, polished to a mirror sheen. Kojama struck it with a bronze mallet, and the sound, a clear, sweet note, rang across the city, rising like hope through every street and alley. Children danced in the paths between the citrus trees. Missandei recited a poem in Valyrian, her voice strong and sure. Where once was ash, let roses bloom. Where once was fire, let song resume. Where once was night, let morning come. A city born of loss and flame. Drogon circled overhead, the other dragons answering in song. The people cheered, tears and laughter mingling. For a moment, all was right, all was new. But shadows did not leave easily. The deeper tunnels remained mysterious. One evening, a scouting party, led by Kojama's best foreman and guarded by two of the boldest riders, disappeared. Their torches winked out in a chasm where the old city had collapsed. When the search party returned, shaken and silent, they bore no wounds but their faces were white as milk. There is something down there, one whispered. Eyes in the dark, voices not human. The old magic lingers, hungry. Daenerys listened. She ordered the lower passages sealed until the dragons could fly strong, and the new order was ready to face whatever slept beneath. But even as darkness lingered underfoot, the city above soared. Population swelled. Refugees from the war-torn Reach, artisans from Volantis and Lies, a band of exiled summer islanders who arrived with drums and bright banners and laughter. Each brought their craft, their music, their hopes. Valyria became a city of tongues, a city of second chances. The dragon riders drilled in the sky at dusk, practicing formation flights over the harbor and swooping low over the rooftops to the delight and terror of the children. The hatchlings learned fast, their wings strengthening, their fire hot enough now to melt iron. Daenerys rode at their head, Drogon's shadow leading, teaching her new order not only how to soar, but how to descend gently, to protect rather than destroy. In the great hall, under banners stitched by Eniyethi and Northmen alike, Daenerys penned her reply to Sansa Stark. To Lady Sansa, Guardian of the North. In Valyria we remember the cold, as you remember the fire. Our cities may be distant, but our hopes are kin. When the time is right, I will send envoys, healers and friends, and perhaps, one day, dragons to warm your halls. Until then, let us keep faith in the peace we forge and the hope we share. Daenerys Stormborn. She pressed her seal, a three-headed dragon reborn in obsidian and glass, then set it aside for the morning ship. Night deepened. The city was quiet, save for the whisper of wind through new leaves and the distant rumble of dragons at play. Daenerys stood on the parapet, arms folded against the chill, gazing at the lights that marked each home, each forge, each dream in the making. Valyria is not finished, she whispered into the darkness. And neither am I. Far below, in the sealed tunnels, something ancient shifted. Eyes opening in the dark. The city was alive, and the city was watching. But for now, hope reigned, and dragons soared, and a new song rose with every dawn. K. Night fell like a velvet shroud, washing the city in blue and silver. Above, stars emerged one by one, finding their old places over Valyria's broken crowns. The great avenues and plazas glowed with firelight lanterns strung in garlands between fresh-carved arches, the light gentler than any torch or oil lamp, an amber shimmer drifting over faces young and old. A scent of damp earth and wood smoke lingered, mingled with blossoms from the first glass gardens and the metallic tang of newly forged steel. Daenerys lingered atop the rampart, silent, listening. Drogon's shadow lay across the half-built keep, wings extended as if in protection. The other dragons had settled on the heights or coiled together on the amphitheater's roof, their bellies glowing faintly with the last heat of the day. The hatchlings now stalked through the city's alleys, watched by proud, wary riders who kept a careful distance, guiding but never corralling. Some children played at taming their dragons, a few daring to offer bits of smoked fish at arm's length. The bolder ones earned a snort or a warm, sulphurous huff, and the tales grew with every telling. Valyria felt new each night, the old city's bones knitted together by labor and hope, by the stubborn refusal of the living to be ruled by the dead. From her post, Daenerys traced the changing skyline, spires encased in scaffolding, glowing domes of the glass gardens, the cranes at the harbor lifting whole ships onto dry land for repair. She watched as lanterns moved through the deep streets, figures traveling in pairs and groups, no longer in fear but with the urgent purpose of builders. The council met in the domed hall above the forges, the air warm from the heat below, walls painted now with scenes of rebirth. Children planting ash roses, dragons circling the towers, the faces of new citizens joining the dance. There was music drifting in, a harp played by one of the summer islanders, the strings singing of far-off storms and safe harbors. Tonight's council was larger, as word had spread. A Lyseni prince, Varys Malo, had arrived under truce, and the Lord Admiral of Bravos Aurelio Rin had brought gifts, a chest of pearl-inlaid cups, and the blue glass rods needed for a true harbor beacon. There were Volantine merchants too, come to speak of trade and peace. The mood was cautious, but hope flickered. Dario presided in Daenerys' place at first, reporting on the city's security and the drills. No thefts in 3 days, he said. And the worst trouble is drunken singing after the late shift. Grey Worm confirmed. No attacks from the wilds. The wyverns keep to the far cliffs. The deep tunnels remain closed as ordered. Kojama brought news from the forge. The latest alloys grow more flexible. We've cast a new blade for each rider. Light, strong, able to cut plate or scale, never dulling in the salt air. She grinned, eyes bright with pride. Missandei read out letters from new settlements. Farmers in the southern plains sent up the first bushels of barley and beans, while 3 Northman families had broken ground on a goat pasture outside the city walls. They want to stay, Your Grace, she said to Daenerys, who had entered quietly as the reports began. They ask if the children can be schooled in Valyrian as well as common. Daenerys nodded, her voice soft but firm. The future is made of many tongues. Let them learn both. Let them choose. Next came the foreign envoys. The Lyseni prince, richly clad in indigo silk and gold rings, stood first. Queen Daenerys, you are the fire the world feared. Lys comes not to chain you, but to share in the flame. We offer 10 ships, each full of marble and glass, and 50 workers, if you will grant our merchants a place in the new harbor, and our artists a wall in the grand hall. Daenerys considered him with the calm weight of one who had seen cities fall for less. Lys may build in Valyria, but all who come must swear peace. No slaves, no chains. If any are found, the penalty is exile. The prince inclined his head, unable to hide his relief. Lys will obey the law of Valyria. The Braavosi admiral stood next, tall and grave. Braavos brings friendship and a request. We would build the first beacon on your coast and station a pilot here to guide ships through the smoking reefs. In return, we ask permission for a small hall, no more than 100 men, to defend our interests. Braavos may build its hall, Daenerys answered. "And the beacon, too. But your men must take Valyrian law while they are here. No duels, no blades drawn in anger." Beto. Aurelio Rin pressed a hand to his chest. "The Titan watches. Bravo swears by its honor." The Volantines brought rumors, not requests. Whispers of disquiet in Essos and Westeros alike, of exiles gathering in Myr and Tyrosh, of lords in the Reach and Stormlands who sent their bastard sons east in hopes of currying favor with the new Dragon Queen. Daenerys listened, absorbing each detail, letting her council debate terms and prices. When the envoys departed, she called for water and closed the meeting. Later, she sat by the window, looking out over the city. Nisande brought news of the schools. Nearly 100 children now gathered each morning in the shade of the amphitheater, learning numbers and letters, singing in 3 languages. In the evening, the older boys and girls trained with spear and bow alongside the Unsullied, their laughter echoing through the alleys. There was peace, but it was the kind that grew only in the careful shadow of vigilance. Arianne found her there, hands stained with ink and sand. "A new map, Khaleesi," she said, laying a sheaf of parchment on the low table. "The southern tunnels open onto a cavern, vast, full of water and roots. The old stories called it the Underlake. Some believe it leads out to the sea, or to things better left sleeping," Daenerys said, eyes tracing the lines. "Are the tunnels stable?" "For now," Arianne said. "We've posted guards and the dragons sense nothing amiss. The children call the echo chamber below the amphitheater the dragon's song. When the wind is right, it sings up through the stones." Daenerys closed her eyes, listening. Far below, a deep, resonant hum vibrated through the city, almost beyond hearing, a natural music, made by water and stone and wind, as old as Valyria itself. "We will build the next garden above the song," she said. "Let the roots drink from that music. Let the children play there." They spoke of other matters, plans for more aqueducts, a festival to mark the city's first full year. "A day for the living, not the dead," Daenerys said. "Let there be lanterns on the water, and music in the streets, and food enough for all. No titles, no banners, only the city." Nain. In the glass gardens, Mara and Koja Ma had coaxed peaches from the old saplings, the fruit golden and fragrant. On the day of the harvest, the whole city gathered to taste the first crop, to sing and tell stories beneath the green and gold leaves. Even the dragons gathered, drawn by the sweet scent and the laughter. One of the hatchlings stole a peach and bolted, wings flapping, chased by children and grown men alike. That night, Daenerys wandered the alleys alone, hooded and unrecognized. She heard stories of loved ones found, of old enemies forgiven, of dreams once thought lost. She saw men from a dozen lands breaking bread together, women sharing songs over the forges, boys and girls whispering tales of the Dragon Queen. She felt the city pulse around her, fragile and bold. In the main square, she watched the workers set up for the coming festival. Lanterns of all shapes, fish, dragons, roses, were strung along the arcades, and tables were set with cups and plates borrowed from every household. "All will share," Grey Worm explained. "No one will go hungry, not tonight." The next day dawned bright and warm. The festival began with a bell's clear note ringing out from the glass garden dome, a song that brought every soul into the street. There were races and games, songs from every corner of Essos, and feasts laid out on long tables, each dish a memory of someone's homeland. The dragons performed above the city, weaving spirals of smoke and fire, their shadows racing across the rooftops. As night fell, Daenerys lit the first lantern and set it afloat on the river that wound through the city. One by one, others joined her, until the water was bright with stars, flickering on the current, mirrored in the eyes of all who watched. There were tears and laughter, hands clasped, songs rising, old Valyrian and new, the voices twining. In the silence that followed, Daenerys stood before her people and spoke, not as queen, but as one of them. "We have built a city of the living from the bones of the dead," she said, her voice steady and clear. "We are not the old Valyria, nor slaves to its ghosts. Each of you, With your labor, your courage, your hope is the beating heart of this city. We will not raise towers to honor kings or warlords. We will not chain our neighbors, nor turn away the hungry or lost. We will be the fire that gives life, not the fire that burns away. No. She looked out at the faces before her. Graybeards and children, mothers with babes, warriors, sailors, smiths, and singers. This city is yours. Guard it well. Teach your children to love it, to defend it, to forgive when anger calls for vengeance. Teach them to listen, to build, to dream. The crowd erupted in cheers, lanterns raised, the music swelling. That night, Daenerys climbed to the highest tower, Drogon at her side. Below, the city shone like a crown of fire, the lanterns drifting downriver toward the sea. The dragons soared, wings flashing silver in the moonlight, voices raised in song. In the darkness beyond the walls, the wilds waited, but within, for a moment, peace reigned. In the weeks that followed, news came from afar. The Iron Bank granted Valyria a line of credit, emboldened by the festival's success and the peace that held. Lords and merchants from Westeros and the free cities sent envoys bearing gifts and requests for alliance. Timber, grain, iron, wool, and most precious of all, new settlers, farmers from the Reach, healers from Pentos, a troop of mummers from King's Landing. Even a band of Night's Watch veterans arrived, sworn to defend the city's walls as free men. With each arrival, the city grew richer, more complex. Houses of stone and timber rose where tents had stood. The glass gardens expanded, their domes gleaming in the sun. The harbor bustled with ships, the markets with trade. The first city council elections were held, the winners chosen by open vote. No bloodlines, only merit. The dragon riders, still few, trained daily, learning to work as a unit to protect rather than conquer. The dragons themselves grew, their colors deepening, their fire hotter and more precise. Moondancer flew with the hatchlings, teaching them the paths of the wind, while Valyrian and Drogon scouted the wilds for danger. On clear days, Daenerys led the formation over the city, the people cheering as their shadows swept the streets. But shadows did not vanish. The old tunnels, now mapped and guarded, revealed secrets. Vaults full of forgotten books and weapons. Chambers choked with the bones of those who had sought shelter from the doom. Strange glyphs lined the deepest halls, warnings or invitations. The echoes in the dragon's song chamber grew louder, and sometimes, late at night, those who listened swore they heard voices not their own. One evening, as a summer storm battered the city, Daenerys descended into the underways, accompanied only by Arianne and Grey Worm. The air was thick with the scent of rain and stone, the lantern's glow thrown into long shadows. At the entrance to the old council chamber, the floor trembled, the song rising, an unearthly hum, felt in the bones more than the ears. Grey Worm signaled for quiet. The three advanced, their steps careful. The walls were slick with condensation, the glyphs gleaming in the lantern light. At the heart of the chamber, a door of obsidian blocked the way, its surface alive with shifting runes. Mara had deciphered some, a warning of sorts, a plea for peace. Daenerys laid her hand upon the door. The song intensified, the air growing warmer. She spoke, voice low but certain. The old words of Valyria's keepers. We come in peace. We come to build, not to destroy. We ask your leave. The runes glowed, then faded. The door opened with a hiss, revealing a long passage lined with statues of dragon lords and queens. At its end, a vault held treasures, scrolls and crystals, glass eggs, and a single massive blade of living steel. Arianne gasped, touching the blade. This was forged before the doom. It sings. Daenerys lifted the sword. The weight was right, the balance perfect. She felt the music of the city coursing through her, the pulse of flame and life. This is not a weapon, she said. It is a key. The city gives us its trust. We must not fail it. They sealed the vault, carrying the blade back to the council, who greeted them in awe. That night, the dragons circled above. Their fire and song joined with the storm's thunder. Word spread, of treasures found, of old magic renewed. Some feared, some rejoiced. But in the heart of the city, hope grew stronger than fear. As autumn approached, the fields outside the walls yielded their first full harvest. Barley, beans, squash, and fruit filled the granaries. The city held a second festival, a feast of thanks. Children chased each other with painted masks. Musicians played through the night. The dragons danced above, sparks trailing from their wings. For the first time in living memory, all the city's people slept without fear. In the weeks after, Daenerys walked the avenues daily, learning the names and faces of her people. She settled disputes, blessed newborns, visited the schools and forges. She heard laughter where once there had been silence, saw art and craft blooming in every corner. At night, she wrote letters to Sansa in Winterfell, to the princes of Dorne, to the Stormlands and the North. Come see what we have built. Come learn, come share. The future belongs to those who dare to hope. In time, the first snow fell on the city's highest roofs. A strange sight in Valyria, but the children ran through it laughing, catching flakes on their tongues. The dragons rolled in the snow, then shook it from their wings, showering sparks and ice on the rooftops. The city shone, a beacon in the dark. A song of hope, a promise kept. In the stillness before dawn, Daenerys stood at the highest point, Drogon at her side, and watched the light creep over Valyria. She closed her eyes, listening to the city's heart. The music of roots and water, the laughter of children, the deep, eternal song of dragons and hope. We are reborn, she whispered, and we will never fall again. Winter came quietly to Valyria, drifting first as mist across the river's skin, then as frost traced in delicate webs across glass domes and the taut cables of half-raised bridges. The ocean gales, once brined and fever-hot, blew cool from the far north, bearing scents of pine and new snow. Above the city, the sky changed with the seasons. At dawn, pewter and gold. At dusk, a burning tapestry of scarlet and cobalt that lingered until the first star dared to shine through. Even as winter's touch spread, the city thrived. The markets brimmed with autumn's last figs and the first winter greens. Kale, turnip, peppery leaves groaned beneath the heated domes. There was music from dawn to dusk. Children's voices learning their letters. The calls of vendors selling almond cake and smoked eel. The rhythmic chimes of forge hammers, shaping the city's bones anew. Smoke rose from the forges and from 100 kitchens, from the great bread ovens fed by driftwood, and from the glassworks where artisans crafted windows and colored beads, their faces bathed in dragonlight. Daenerys walked the avenues as she always had, bareheaded in the cold, her cloak thrown back, silver hair unbound and gleaming in the new sun. She paused to watch children skating on the shallow pools that had frozen in the glass gardens, their laughter echoing off curved obsidian walls. She greeted the old men who fished from the harbor's edge, the summer islanders who mended sails in the lee of the council hall, the Enyethi healers who tended to the coughs and chills that swept through the city's youngest. Everywhere she went, people reached out. A touch to her sleeve, a blessing, a handful of rosemary, or a charm of blue glass. No queen had ever been more at home among her people, nor more watched. On the high walls, the new city guard stood vigilant. Half were unsullied, half were volunteers from the first freeborn generation. Reachmen, Northmen, Dothraki, even a few Ironborn whose loyalty had been proved by a year of honest work. Their armor bore no sigils but the triple spiral of the new order, painted in white and blue and black. Each guard trained with spear, shield, and bow, but also learned words of healing and how to greet in 5 languages. Their banners snapped proudly even in the cold wind. Beyond the walls, work crews cleared the last of the old ash-choked streets, reclaiming lost quarters. What had once been a charnel city was now a patchwork of hope. Houses of timber and stone, guild halls, bathhouses, gardens, and schools. The glass gardens expanded in every direction, kept warm by the forge's breath. Ships came daily from Bravos, Pentos, and the Summer Isles, even a few daring captains from Old Town and the Stormlands. The harbor's beacon shone out each night, a tower of living steel and glass, visible 10 miles to sea. its flame kindled and tended by the youngest of the dragon riders. Drogon ruled the skies as winter deepened, black wings blotting out the sun when he soared. He hunted in the wilds beyond the city, ranging far, returning each night to roost on the keep's highest tower. The other dragons grew strong. Moondancer, sleek and ghostly, led the hatchlings in their first high flights. Valyrian took the sea cliffs, teaching the youngest to ride the storm winds, to swoop low and snatch fish from the shallows. Of the 4 hatchlings, 3 had found their riders, 2 girls and a boy, their bond forged through months of quiet work, patience, and trust. The last dragon, a coal-black male with fiery orange eyes, was still wild and unclaimed, though every day children and would-be riders lined the gardens to try their luck with him. A year passed since the first bells ringing, and the city prepared for the festival of renewal. The council, now 20 strong and drawn from every class and nation, planned a week of feasts and music, games and contests. There would be readings from old Valyrian scrolls, and stories from the children, and, at Daenerys' urging, a procession not for the dead, but for all those lost and found since the city's rebirth. Lanterns in the shapes of dragons and ships, roses and hearts, were crafted by every household. When the first night came, every home hung its lantern and joined in the song that wound through the streets like a river of light. The glass gardens opened wide, filled with laughter and music. Smells of orange and honey, stew and hot bread. The dragons performed above the crowd, their flames painting constellations in the sky, their shadows flickering over the domes. On the festival's last night, Daenerys stood with her people at the water's edge, setting her lantern afloat among 1,000 others. She watched as they drifted, the city's dreams carried by current and tide into the unknown. But not all was peace. Beneath the city, the old tunnels still whispered. Sometimes at night, a tremor would shake the deep forges, or the dragon song chamber would pulse with a resonance that made the glass windows sing. There were rumors of shapes glimpsed in the shadows, or voices heard by miners lost in reverie. Kojama, ever practical, ordered more supports, better lighting, and teams of dragon riders to patrol the deepest passages. It was on such a night, cold and bright with stars, that Mara the archivist came to Daenerys. She found her on the parapet, gazing north where faint aurora danced above the ruined hills. "There is something I must show you," Mara said quietly. They descended into the city's underways, joined by Arianne, Missandei, and Grey Worm. The path wound down through the echo chamber, the dragon song humming just at the edge of hearing. At the deepest level, where the old obsidian door had once barred their way, they paused before a new passage, one revealed only days ago, when a tremor collapsed an ancient wall. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of earth and old fire. The walls were lined with carvings, their surfaces worked smooth by centuries of water and time. Mara's lantern revealed glyphs older than any Valyrian script, pictographs of men and women, dragons and wolves, rivers and stars. At the chamber's center stood a well of living stone, its water black and glassy. Floating within was a single, uncracked egg, veined with silver and blue. "It predates the doom by centuries," Mara whispered. "This is not Valyrian. I think it is older still." Daenerys reached for the egg. It was warm to the touch, humming with potential. She felt the city pulse around her, as if every stone awaited her decision. She saw visions, dragons rising over frozen forests, rivers running with starlight, a city unbroken by time or grief. She drew back, breathless, heart pounding. "We must be careful," she said. "This is a gift and a warning." They returned to the surface, sealing the passage and posting guards. The egg was placed in the glass gardens, watched by Mara and the best of the healers. Daenerys dreamed of it every night, a song of water and flame, of rebirth and peril. Days passed. The wild dragon, still unclaimed, grew restless. He prowled the city's edge, raiding the cattle pens, circling the harbor as if searching for something only he could sense. Children named him Ember. Daenerys visited him often, speaking softly, letting him see her as she was, no longer a conqueror, but a builder, a mother to her people. One morning, As frost silvered the city, Ember approached her in the glass gardens. He sniffed at the old egg, snorted, and finally bowed his head. Daenerys placed her palm upon his brow. The bond sparked, an explosion of heat and light that made her knees buckle. She saw through his eyes. The city below, the rivers winding like threads of silver, the old tunnels pulsing with forgotten magic. She understood then what the city had become. Not only a place of stone and fire, but a living memory, a bridge between past and future. Word spread. The last dragon had chosen his queen. The people cheered, and the city's heart beat stronger. Winter grew harsh, but the city endured. Storms battered the coast, but the walls held. The fields outside froze, but the glass gardens fed all. When sickness struck, Nethi healers and Mara's wisdom quelled it before it spread. The forges burned night and day, casting tools and swords and bells. The dragon riders kept watch, and no enemy dared approach. But the greatest challenge came not from without, but from the depths. One night, as a blizzard howled, a quake shook the city. Bells rang, people fled into the streets. In the underways, a fissure opened. Old stone torn aside as easily as silk. From within, a flood of black water rose, hissing and steaming. The dragon song chamber pulsed with light. The unhatched egg gleamed blue as the deep sea. Drogon and Ember led the riders into the depths. Their fire boiled the water back, but something moved within the shadows. Old, cold, relentless. A voice echoed, not with words but with memory. The sorrow of centuries, the price of pride. Daenerys stood in the doorway, the blue egg in her arms. She sang, not with words, but with hope. Her will and the cities joined as one. The dragons echoed her, their fire white-hot, their song shaking the very stone. The water retreated, the fissure sealed, stone knitting itself closed. The city shuddered, then still. In the silence, the egg cracked. A new dragon emerged, smaller than the others, but glowing with its own light, scales like starlight on snow. It climbed onto Daenerys' shoulder, nuzzling her cheek, and the people who watched from above wept for joy. Spring returned, slow but sure. Flowers bloomed in the glass gardens, fields greened outside the walls, and the river ran clear again. The new dragon, Starseed, the children called her, grew quickly, learning from Drogon and Ember, her song blending with the city's own. A new bell was cast, its note higher and clearer than any before. Valyria's fame spread farther still. Kings and queens sent gifts, seeking alliance or knowledge. Some came in secret, hoping to learn the secret of rebirth. Daenerys greeted all, but gave nothing away except this. Hope is the only fire that cannot be chained. Learn to tend it, and your city too will live. Years passed. The city endured. Children born in the first winter grew tall and strong, their dreams as wild as dragons. The council's wisdom grew, shaped by argument and consensus, by voices from every shore. The glass gardens sprawled across the rooftops, glowing with light even on the darkest days. On the 5th anniversary of the first bell, Daenerys stood with her council atop the city's highest tower. Drogon, Ember, Starseed, and the others circled above, their wings flashing silver in the dawn. Below, every street was filled, every voice joined in a song of peace and pride. Ships in the harbor raised banners from every land, their horns echoing out to sea. Daenerys raised her hand. The city fell silent. "We have built more than walls and towers," she said. "We have built a promise, a city where all may find a home, where every voice may sing. We have faced the shadows and turned them to light. We are Valyria renewed, and the world will never forget." The dragons roared, a sound of joy, of hope, of life. And as the dawn rose, touching every dome, every banner, every heart, Daenerys knew. Valyria was reborn, and would never fall again. The dawn after the 5th festival spilled over the city in a river of gold, washing the battered domes and crystal gardens in light that seemed to deepen every color. The ancient spires cast long shadows over the bustling harbor, and the river, newly dredged and lined with flagstones, sparkled as if dusted with diamonds. All of Valyria was awake early, restless with a sense of new beginning. Old ghosts seemed gentled in the sun, their whispers lost in the laughter of children and the clangor of construction. For Daenerys, each festival was both an ending and a rebirth. Today would mark the city's most ambitious step yet, the birth of its first assembly, and the first gathering of dragon riders from every land since the Doom. The night before, Daenerys had not slept. She sat before the open window in her modest upper chamber, Drogon's great head pillowed beneath the sill, his breath rising in slow, peaceful gusts. Emmer perched atop the new bell tower, eyes aglow in the dark, while Starseed and Moondancer patrolled the heights, flickering silhouettes above the glowing domes. Daenerys' mind spun with questions and the inexhaustible hope that had become her armor. Could the city hold together as it grew? Would peace last, when so many still hungered for vengeance or power? Would the dragons, oldest of all, remain a blessing, or become once more a curse? Before sunrise, Missandei joined her with a stack of petitions and letters, some written in elegant Valyrian or Westerosi script, others scrawled in clumsy common or foreign glyphs. One bore a wax seal broken and reset many times, Sansa Stark's hand. Another, unmistakable in its flowery Lyseni ink, begged for a truce in the simmering glass wars of the free cities. Still another came from the Iron Bank, congratulating the city on its continued resilience and commercial transparency. Their praise edged, as always, with hunger for collateral. Daenerys set them aside and leaned out the window, breathing in the city's living scent. Baking bread, blooming citrus, forge smoke, salt, and the faint ozone of dragons in flight. She watched as the assembly square filled with people. On the broad steps of the forum, Missandei and Grey Worm directed the throngs. Riders in blue and white, city guards in triple spiraled livery, sailors and merchants and counselors in festival colors. There were Northmen in furs and free folk in rough-spun, Dothraki riders bedecked in polished bronze, and summer islanders with bright beads woven into their hair. The old prejudices still lingered, but the city itself forced mingling. No corner of Valyria was reserved for one people alone. The dragon riders arrived last. Drogon landed first, eclipsing the square in shadow, then folding his wings to let sunlight break over the crowd. Ember followed, flame-orange eyes flicking left and right, alert to every movement. Moondancer, sleek and spectral, glided in with the hatchlings, their colors glinting like living jewels. One silver blue, one copper, one a mottled green-black that had not yet chosen a rider. Starseed soared down last, smaller but luminous, her scales pearled in morning light. The crowd parted and fell silent, the air heavy with awe. Daenerys walked to the center of the assembly, her council at her side. No crown, no throne, just a simple circlet of glass, spun from the first harvest of the gardens, and inscribed with the words renewal and trust. Her cloak was the deep blue of the harbor, trimmed with threads of white and red, the colors of every house and trade. When she spoke, her voice needed no amplification. 5 years ago we gathered as refugees, orphans, wanderers, and exiles, she said. We came with nothing but hope and the memory of loss. Together we have built a city whose walls are not meant to keep out the world, but to hold us together while we heal. Today we take the next step, not as a people ruled by fear or blood, but as a free assembly, where every voice is heard. Danin. She gestured to the benches arrayed in a wide semicircle. Each trade, guild, and district had chosen a representative. The dragon riders, now 9, stood together as a living symbol of the city's unity and peril. Missandei read the roll in 3 languages. The people cheered, and Daenerys felt a current of pride and terror mingled, as sharp as the morning air. Let this be the law of Valyria, Daenerys said, that no one is above the assembly, not even your queen. Let every counselor speak with the voice of their neighbors, and every dragon rider fly with the hopes of the city beneath their wings. We are not immune to mistakes, nor to danger, but together, we are stronger than the Doom, stronger than any one blood or banner. A hush fell. Then, as the first item of assembly was called, it became clear how far they had come, and how far they had yet to go. The Dothraki wanted more pasture on the East Ridge, where the glass gardens now spread. The Summer Islanders asked for a hall near the harbor, for their music and rites. The Northmen spoke for the laborers who kept the aqueducts clear, arguing for better wages. The Braavosi delegate sought a treaty on tariffs. Arguments broke like thunder, hot and sharp. Laughter followed, sometimes applause. Daenerys watched, not interfering. Missandei kept order, her voice calm as a bell. Grey Worm and the guards gently settling disputes that nearly became fights. As the morning wore on, the assembly heard petition after petition. Mara the archivist presented a plan for a city library, a living archive of all the stories, laws and names of every citizen in every tongue. Koja Ma and the smiths revealed a new water wheel for the forges, powered by the river's flow and heated by the dragon's breath. The first apprentices, children of slaves and lords alike, came forward to be named in the city's records, no longer hidden or shamed, but celebrated. When at last the assembly adjourned for the feast, Daenerys stood aside and watched the square transform. The benches became tables, laden with stews and fruits, black bread and honeyed wine, the harvest of 5 years' labor. The people ate together, and the dragon riders stood among them, not above, but as kin. Drogon's massive form loomed nearby, but children ran laughing between his claws, emboldened by his gentleness. Starseed curled around the edge of the fountain, her eyes half closed, basking in the warmth of the crowd. At sunset, the dragons flew together, their wings painting the sky with ribbons of flame and shadow. Lanterns rose from the river, carrying wishes and prayers. As the sky darkened, the city glowed with 1,000 lights, the assembly square pulsing like a heart at the city's center. Music rose from every quarter, harps, drums, pipes, and voices lifted in a dozen languages. Later, in the council chamber, the assembly debated long into the night. Some matters were simple: how to allocate grain in a lean season, where to build the next school, how to train new healers. Others were thornier: what to do with the treasure found in the deepest tunnels, whether to permit the construction of a Lysani trading house, how to respond to letters from Westeros asking for advisors to visit and learn from the city's dragon riders. "We must not give away our greatest gift," warned a Volantene, mindful of old wars. "But neither can we close ourselves to the world," replied a Northman, his voice echoing the hopes of many. Daenerys listened, her eyes on the night outside, where the dragons soared like living stars. As the assembly drew to a close, Mara presented her vision, a living record, not just of Valyria but of every city that would learn from its example. "We are not an island," she said, "but a beacon. Let our history be open to all. Let our mistakes be warnings, and our triumphs a lesson that even the ashes can flower." The assembly voted, and the city's first law was passed. Valyria would be a city of learning, a place of refuge and sharing, open to all who came in peace. The city library would stand beside the assembly, its doors never locked. Afterward, Daenerys walked the silent halls. She found herself in the old garden, where years before, she had watched the first ash rose bloom. The city was still, only the distant beat of wings and the hum of the dragon's song chamber below. She traced her hand along the rough bark of the tree, thinking of all that had been lost and all that had been made new. A shadow moved beside her. It was Arianne, her face pale in the moonlight. "You look tired, my queen." Daenerys smiled, the lines at the corners of her eyes deepening. "We have come so far, and yet I feel as if we have only begun. Do you regret it?" Daenerys shook her head. "Never. Every stone, every name, every child's laughter, worth more than all the crowns I once dreamed of." Arianne touched her arm. "The world watches. Some envy, some fear, but most, they hope." They stood together, listening to the city breathe. Below, the river murmured, carrying lanterns out to sea. The dragons sang above, their music blending with the wind and the water, a song that would echo through generations. The months that followed were a time of both growth and peril. Spring brought new settlers, exiles from Myron Tyrosh, mages from Quarth, merchants from Dorne. Each brought their customs and their worries, and the assembly worked daily to bind them together with fairness and patience. A company of Westerosi knights arrived, bearing banners of the wolf and kraken. Sansa Stark's envoy led them, a tall woman with hair like flame. They came not as conquerors, but as friends, eager to learn the new ways, to see the dragons and the gardens, to bring news of Westeros' slow recovery from war. There were tensions, of course. A quarrel in the market between a Lyseni and a Dothraki nearly escalated into bloodshed. But the assembly intervened, settling the matter with mediation and fair recompense. A fire broke out in the forges, threatening a whole quarter. But dragon riders and citizens alike fought it back, saving more than they lost. Famine threatened when storms delayed the Braavosi grain ships, but the city's stores and careful planning kept hunger at bay. The old magic in the tunnels grew quieter, as if at peace with the life above. The Chamber of the Dragon Song became a place of pilgrimage. Those who listened there reported visions, sometimes of old Valyria, sometimes of futures yet to come. The library grew, its shelves lined with books from every land. Children read by the windows, their laughter echoing through the halls. One afternoon, as rain pattered on the glass domes, Daenerys sat with the council, discussing the first petition for a school of medicine. Mara proposed that healers from every nation teach together, blending their arts and sharing their secrets. Kojama wanted to train smiths to work with living steel and glass, to create tools and weapons for peace, not war. The dragon riders volunteered to serve as messengers and guardians for the city's neighbors, flying over plague or fire, bringing hope where before there had only been dread. Daenerys listened, pride swelling in her heart. The city was no longer hers alone, it belonged to all. Its heart beat in every counselor, every child, every rider and smith. She thought of her old dreams, of a throne of swords, and felt nothing but gratitude for the path she had taken instead. On the eve of midsummer, Daenerys climbed the highest tower. Drogon joined her, massive and serene, his scales rippling with the colors of the sunset. Ember perched nearby, his gaze sweeping the horizon, always alert. Starseed circled, trailing a ribbon of light behind her. Below, the city glowed, lanterns and fires, music and laughter, the assembly square alive with joy. She looked out over her city and the world beyond. The ships in the harbor, the fields and forests, the mountains rising purple in the distance. The wind carried scents of lavender and forge smoke, salt and sweet bread. She breathed deep, and the memory of every hardship, every loss, every moment of doubt faded into the joy of this moment. Once, I dreamed of conquering the world, she said softly to Drogon. Now I only wish to build one worth living in. Drogon lowered his head, his eye meeting hers. She felt his assent. A wordless, powerful promise, as deep as the earth. Below, the assembly square pulsed with life. The people of Valyria joined in song. Above, the dragons soared, their wings trailing fire and hope. And in the quiet between heartbeats, Daenerys knew. The work was never finished, but the dream endured. This city was a beginning, a promise for all who dared to hope, and the song of dragons would never again be silenced. And as night fell, casting the city in silver and gold, Daenerys whispered a vow, spoken to herself, to her dragons, to all who would come after. We are reborn, and we will never fall. The river carried her words out to sea, and the city slept, safe, whole, and shining, the heart of a new world. K.K. Unduntenchawai. Spring's return came with a chorus of green and gold. The river's meltwater overflowing its banks, painting the glass gardens with a wild profusion of flowers and scent. The city had survived another winter. The domes shimmered anew under the pale sunlight, and people moved through the plazas as if shaking off a long, dark sleep. In the harbor, ships from all corners of the world offloaded cargo, braids of Dothraki horses, barrels of Norvoshi wine, bales of reach wheat and woven silk from the ETI. On the upper terraces, the schoolchildren planted rows of ash roses beside the old Valyrian statues, their laughter ringing like bells. Each day in Valyria was another note in a song that would not end. Daenerys began her mornings now with Starseed, the youngest dragon, whose scales shone in every color of the sunrise. Together, They soared high above the city while the others, Drogon Ember, Moondancer, Valerian, and the growing clutch of younger dragons, flew their own patrols, keeping a wary but respectful eye on the wilds beyond. From above, the city looked alive. Avenues branching like veins, new houses blooming amid ancient ruins, the assembly square alive with morning bustle. Children ran, banners snapped, and, in the highest belfries, the city's bells rang the hour. It had been years since the assembly first sat. The council had changed with the seasons, new voices rising as others left to farm, to build, or to travel. The dragon riders had grown into a force both feared and trusted. Their discipline and restraint the envy of foreign envoys who visited, watched, and sometimes tried to tempt the riders away. The city's true defense, Daenerys saw, lay not in dragons, but in unity. Hard-won and often challenged, but never broken. One such challenge arose early that spring, as a rumor swept through the harbor. A Lyseni galley, flying false colors, had tried to bribe dockworkers to smuggle living steel out of the city. The assembly convened in urgent session, filling the old forum with voices raised in anger and confusion. Lyseni gold always comes with a hook in it, warned Kojama, her arms folded across her broad chest. If we sell the secret, soon our own children will be chained to foreign masters. But we trade with Bravos, with Pentos, with Old Town, argued one of the younger counselors, a former scribe from the Riverlands. How are they different? The law is clear, Missandei said quietly, rolling out the city's charter. No trade in living steel. No arms sold without assembly's consent. Not for any price. The room buzzed with the debate, arguments flaring and dying like sparks. Daenerys listened, letting each voice be heard. She saw fear in some. Fear that the peace could not hold, that their enemies would return stronger. She saw pride in others, defiance in those who had come from nothing and would not be bullied again. In the end, the assembly voted. The Lyseni galley was searched, the bribes seized, the ringleaders quietly exiled, escorted to the edge of Valyrian waters by 2 dragon riders. In the aftermath, Daenerys addressed the city from the assembly steps. We did not rebuild this city to become another empire of chains and greed, she said. Every secret we share, every gift we give, must serve not only ourselves, but the generations to come. Let others envy, let them plot. We have survived worse, and we will endure. The square erupted in cheers, and that night, music and laughter echoed through the lantern-lit streets. Valyria's reputation as a city of hope and renewal drew more settlers than ever. Some arrived by invitation, some by luck or desperation. Among them were scholars from the Citadel, eager to study the city's unique medicines, and mages from Korth and Ashai, hoping to learn the secret of the living steel and the mysterious dragon song. With them came stories of peace holding in the north, of rebuilding in the Reach, of tentative alliances forming between lords once sworn enemies. Even the Iron Island sent a delegation, led by a thin, weather-beaten woman named Yara Greyjoy, whose ships docked beside the Summer Islanders with minimal quarrel. The city adapted. New housing rose on the southern hills. A second school opened near the Glass Gardens, its teachers drawn from every nation. The healers founded a hospice for the sick and lost, and the smiths, led by Kojama, began work on a new bell, larger and richer in tone than any before. Every guild took turns feeding the poor, and every child learned both the old stories and the new, their lessons inked in the living record Mara and her scribes kept in the growing city library. The dragons, too, changed. Starseed, though still the smallest, grew faster and wilder than her siblings, exploring the mountain passes and sleeping in the wind-swept crags beyond the city. Drogon and Ember competed in gentle rivalry, racing the length of the peninsula at dusk. Moondancer preferred the water, often seen plunging into the river and surfacing with wriggling silver fish. The unclaimed green-black dragon had finally chosen a rider, a quiet boy from Volantis whose song, sung each morning at sunrise, had drawn the dragon near and earned its trust. With each new bond, Daenerys felt the city's strength deepen, not just in fire and flight, but in the simple faith of a people growing into their future. The assembly reflected this, its debates more nuanced, its members more patient with each other. There were still arguments, over taxes, over territory, over the blending of foreign custom with Valyrian tradition. But decisions came with less fear and more wisdom. Summer brought its own gifts. The fields outside the walls yielded record harvests. The river teemed with fish and eels. The city's population swelled as former enemies, Stormlanders, Taroshi, even some Northmen once at war with Daenerys, settled, intermarried, and built new lives. The Festival of Bells that year was the greatest yet. Children in painted masks, dancers from every land, a parade of lanterns that snaked from the assembly square to the harbor, where ships from a dozen nations waited at anchor. The dragons performed a great display, weaving fire above the city, and the bells rang all night, a song of triumph and unity. Yet as the city thrived, Daenerys remained vigilant. She walked the tunnels beneath the forges, ensuring the old magic stayed quiet. And she met each new arrival in the assembly, looking for danger in every smile. Mara and the scholars reported new discoveries in the deepest vaults. Maps that hinted at more surviving Valyrian outposts. Relics sealed in time, perhaps even other eggs or dragon seeds, waiting in secret places. One evening, as the sun fell and the river turned to molten gold, a group of riders from the Far East arrived. They brought word from Meereen, Astapor, and Korth, cities rising from their own ashes, inspired by Valyria's rebirth. Their leader, a tall woman with eyes the color of jade, knelt before Daenerys. "We have come to learn," she said, "to ask your council's wisdom and your people's blessing. Will you send dragon riders to teach us, to help us build as you have built?" Daenerys called an assembly that night. The question was simple, but the answers were not. Some counselors feared losing the city's greatest guardians. Others argued that true peace could only come by sharing, not hoarding, the gifts of dragons and learning. In the end, it was the children, students from both schools, who convinced the assembly. They spoke not with politics, but with dreams. Of a world where no city stood alone, where dragons flew not as harbingers of war but as heralds of hope. So the assembly voted. 3 riders and their dragons would journey east, carrying seeds for the glass gardens, scrolls from Mara's library, and the promise of friendship. There was fear, of course, and sadness at the parting, but more pride than sorrow. That summer, the first foreign delegation departed, a fleet of ships following the dragons across the dawn. The city watched from the walls, singing a song of farewell and welcome, a song that echoed across the water. Seasons turned. The city grew. New markets, new songs, new faces. The assembly square saw weddings and debates, festivals and funerals. The library swelled, its walls inscribed with the names of every citizen. The river, once choked with ash, now ran clear, carrying the city's lanterns out to sea. Daenerys grew older, her hair more silver than gold, her eyes lined by sun and laughter. She ruled less and listened more, her wisdom shaping the assembly, her presence a steady star for all to steer by. Drogon aged beside her, slower but no less mighty, his bond with her deepened beyond words. One autumn evening, as the first leaves fell and the river's song turned plaintive, Daenerys stood atop the bell tower, watching the city below. The bells rang, the dragons sang, and the people, her people, danced in the lantern-lit streets. She closed her eyes and breathed, feeling the pulse of the city. Stone, water, fire, hope. Valyria was alive, alive as it had never been before. Its heart beat in every dream, every voice, every flight of dragons across the dawn. And Daenerys whispered, "For all the world to hear, we are the fire that gives life. We are the song that will not die. We are Valyria, and we endure